The war in Ukraine nearing 1,000 days, and the United States has now made a significant change to its policy on allowing Kiev to use long-range American weapons.
Right, Shivan. As per multiple reports, US President Joe Biden has cleared Ukraine to use US-provided missiles to strike deep into Russian territory.
Well, news of Biden's decision came hours after Ukraine announced nationwide emergency power restrictions from Monday after Russia launched a massive attack targeting its energy generation and transmission infrastructure. Ukraine said that at least 11 civilians were also killed in the attacks. One report citing officials claimed that Biden's decision came in response to Russia bringing North Korean troops into the fight. Ukrainian President Zelensky has long pushed for the authorization from Washington to use these powerful Army tactical missile systems or ATACMS to hit targets deep inside Russia.
Zelensky has responded to the reports in his evening address, referring to the military's long-range capability as one of the main points of Ukraine's victory plan.
Today, there's a lot of talk in the media about us receiving permission for respective actions. But strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. They certainly will. Glory to Ukraine.
The response by Ukraine's neighbor Poland was more enthusiastic. Writing on social media platform X, the Polish foreign minister said President Biden responded in a language that Putin understands.
Well, the Biden administration had earlier allowed Kiev to use the high mobility artillery rocket systems or HIMARS against Russian forces directly across the border. HIMARS has a range of about 50 miles, and now Ukraine will be able to use longer range ATACMS, which have a range of about 190 miles. The US decision may also come in play on the use of Storm Shadow missiles and Scalp missiles by Ukraine.
The British and the French militaries have given the Ukrainians a limited number of Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles. They have a range of about 155 miles, less than the American missile system. The ATACMS is a long-range surface-to-surface artillery weapon system that the US has been using in several wars. It is launched from the highly mobility artillery rocket system and multiple launch rocket system M270 platforms. The missiles are expected to be used in the Kursk region, where Ukraine has been fighting a Russian counterattack.
Biden's decision to allow the use of long-range weapons into Russia comes as Donald Trump is set to return to power in January, just weeks from now, and Trump's Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has outlined a plan to end the war. It would allow the Russians to keep the Ukrainian territory that their forces have seized, and the Ukrainians hope that they would be able to trade any Russian territory they hold in Kursk for Ukrainian territory held by Russia in any future negotiations.
For more on this, we're now being joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, live from Virginia. He's a military expert and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Welcome to World DNA, Colonel Davis.
Thanks for having me.
First up, Colonel Davis, how do you see this latest move changing the trajectory on the battlefield, especially at a time when Russia has been making gains?
Listen, this is a puzzling decision and a bit of a troubling one that the Biden administration on the way out is going to now suddenly lift restrictions. If this turns out to be true, and I'm hoping that the results turn out to be different, because the Biden White House has not officially said this in public, and I hope that changes before now and like tomorrow, for example, when they're certainly going to be asking that question. The reason is these long-range missiles, there's two huge problems. One is it's not going to have any impact on the tactical fight at all because there's not enough of them. You may recall that last September when this issue came up and Zelensky was in the United States to try and get Biden and all the other NATO leaders to give a approval for him to use long-range weapons. The Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, said that's not going to change anything on the battlefield. And by the way, there's not enough of them, not for U.S., not for France, and not for Britain. So if that was true then, I assure you it's still true now. Second thing is that these missiles will almost certainly spawn a response from Russia. This is one of the few times that Putin has explicitly laid out a red line that says if long-range missiles are used by Ukraine into deep areas of Russia, that can only be done with the active participation of the U.S. or NATO forces, and he will regard that as a direct engagement and take appropriate action. And it is just not a wise course of action to take such a risk, to wonder if Putin's going to do that for something that is going to provide almost no gain on the battlefield.
Colonel Davis, and you mentioned a couple of these points. I just want to string them together. On his last few weeks in office, Biden finally gives that go-ahead, if reports are to be believed, after stalling on it for several months. There was no response from the U.S. and finally now they're giving a go-ahead, if reports are to be believed. At the same time, what you also mentioned, that for Russia, this is a red line. And Putin, in as many words, has said this: it will be a direct war between Russia and NATO if long-range weapons and that permission to use them inside Russia is given to Ukraine. At this point, is this what is Biden really trying to do here? Give a burning house to Trump to handle after he leaves?
I mean, that's of course speculation. I don't know what his actual thought is. What the reported in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post earlier this afternoon. They claim that it's because the North Koreans are being used in Kursk, and they say that this is to send a signal. But listen, there's no signal to be sent. Russia has no shortage of men. They don't actually need 10,000 North Korean troops to continue to squeeze this purge into Kursk off. And Russia has been on a long-term offensive, and they have been methodically squeezing that thing down. They don't need those troops. And so this is not going to stop North Korea. I mean, I don't understand what logic anyone thinks that sending long-range missiles into Russia is going to deter North Korea. But the bigger question is this to give a burning house to President Trump, like you say, because there is no rational military position that the administration can claim to say, by us giving them these missiles now, something better could be in existence by January the 20th. There is no path to that. So we're left wondering what really is the Biden administration's intentions.
Colonel Davis, from talking about the ramifications on the battlefield, I also want to speak about the diplomatic impact of this move. Do you think that this latest move puts Kiev in a better position to negotiate if ceasefire talks happen?
Zero. In fact, I'd say it's probably the opposite. By taking this kind of aggressive action, I think it's going to make the Russian side less willing to have a negotiated settlement. This idea that somehow this Kursk intervention can be used as a negotiating chip, that somehow Russia would give anything anywhere else, especially in the east, in order to get back Ukraine, Kursk, they don't need that because they can take militarily. They have the wherewithal, they have the troops, they have the ammunition, and they have the time. So they're certainly not going to give anything away there. And this is only going to, I think, make Russia more angry if they hit these missiles deep. And it could cause them to push even harder on the Eastern Front and be less willing to negotiate, taking on the ground with military force what they want to accomplish.
Colonel Davis, in recent weeks and ever since the result came out of the U.S. elections, Trump has already spoken with Russia, and Russia said, yes, they are willing to have talks. They're willing to hear if there is any proposal for peace. At the same time, recently, there were also talks between Putin and Olaf Scholz. Again, Russia is open to discussions. It seems like a talk could be somewhere, down the tunnel, or there is some hope for that at this point, at least when they're ready to talk. Where do you feel that goes at this point if these reports are to be believed, or if Ukraine starts striking deep inside Russia?
Yeah, without question, that is a possibility. Negotiated settlement finally is a path that has the potential, and I do stress potential because there's a lot. Russia is in the upper hand right now, and they would drive a hard bargain, and they would be in a position to actually come out with positive terms. But when you have Viktor Orban, Fico from Slovakia, Erdogan from Turkey, and now Olaf Scholz actually saying, hey, I'm willing to talk too, as you have the incoming American administration all saying they're willing to talk, Putin has expressly said, sure, I'm willing to talk, as he has throughout this entire 3-year war. So there's every reason to think let's give that a chance. So then one might reasonably ask why the outgoing administration is potentially going to ramp up military action, which can't change the ground action on the battlefield, but could upset the potential for peace. And I think that's something that President Trump is probably going to have to address at some point.
So you've made a lot of pertinent points there. That was Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis joining us from Virginia, military expert and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Always a pleasure speaking with you, sir.
Thank you.